When I finally opened that encrypted file on my late husband's computer, the balance read $2,300,000. But by the time I discovered it, my own sons had already stolen every last cent, leaving me with nothing but medical debt and the bitter taste of betrayal. My name is Margaret Johnson. I'm 68 years old, and what I'm about to tell you will forever change how you see family, trust, and the dark side of digital inheritance. Thank you for listening to my story. If it touched your heart or made you think about protecting yourself and your loved ones, please subscribe to this channel so you can hear more stories like mine. I'd also love to know I'm not alone in this. Would you leave a comment telling me what city you're from? It would mean the world to me to know there are people out there who understand. My name is Margaret Johnson. I'm 68 years old, and for 43 years I was married to the love of my life, Robert Johnson. We lived in a modest two-story house in Austin, Texas, the kind with a wraparound porch and a magnolia tree in the front yard that bloomed every spring without fail. Bob was a systems engineer, one of those quiet, brilliant minds who could fix anything with circuits and code. I was a librarian at the Austin Public Library for 32 years before I retired. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable. We had 2 sons, Michael and David, and we thought we had built a good life together. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was discovering that the people I trusted most in this world, my own flesh and blood, had been planning to rob me blind while I grieved over their father's grave. Let me take you back to where it all started, to a time when I still believed in the goodness of family. It was a Thursday afternoon in late March, and the Texas sun was pouring through the kitchen windows, warming the ceramic tiles under my feet. I remember the exact date because it was 3 days after Bob's funeral. March 23rd. The house still smelled like the casseroles and flower arrangements people had dropped off, that peculiar mixture of sympathy and decay. I was standing at the sink, washing the same coffee mug for the 3rd time, not because it needed cleaning, but because my hands needed something to do. Bob had been sick for 11 months, stage 4 pancreatic cancer. They diagnosed him in April of the previous year, and the doctors gave him 6 months at most. But Bob was stubborn. He fought like hell, going through round after round of chemotherapy, radiation, experimental treatments that cost more than our house. Our insurance covered some of it, but not nearly enough. We had depleted our savings, maxed out 3 credit cards, and taken out a second mortgage on the house. By the time Bob passed away on March 20th, we were drowning in medical debt to the tune of $347,000. I remember the day of the funeral so clearly. It was one of those perfect spring days that felt like a cruel joke. Bluebonnets were blooming along the highway, and the sky was that brilliant shade of blue that Bob always loved. Michael and David had flown in. Michael from Seattle, where he worked as a software developer, and David from Chicago, where he ran some kind of marketing consultancy. They both wore dark suits and somber expressions, hugging me tight and telling me everything would be okay. "We're here for you, Mom," Michael had said, his voice thick with emotion. He was the older one, 42, with Bob's tall frame and my dark eyes. "Whatever you need, we've got your back." David had nodded, his arm around my shoulders. At 38, he looked more like me, shorter and stockier, with that same determined set to his jaw. "Dad would want us to take care of you. We're family. That's what family does." I believed them. God help me, I believed every word. After the funeral, after the last of the mourners had left and the house fell silent, my boys sat me down at the kitchen table, the same table where we'd shared thousands of meals, where they'd done their homework as kids, where Bob and I had paid bills and planned vacations and mapped out our retirement. "Mom, we need to talk about finances," Michael said gently. He had a manila folder in front of him, and the sight of it made my stomach clench. "We know this is hard, but we need to figure out where things stand." I nodded, twisting my wedding ring around my finger. It felt too loose now. I'd lost 15 pounds during Bob's illness. David pulled out a notepad. "Do you know what Dad's life insurance situation was?" "There's a policy through his old company," I said. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, thin and papery. $50,000, I think. But that'll barely make a dent in the medical bills. Michael and David exchanged a look. I would come to recognize that look later, that silent communication that excluded me entirely. At the time, I thought it was concern. What about retirement accounts? Pension? Anything like that? Michael asked. I shook my head. We cashed out Bob's 401k 2 years ago when we needed a new roof. The pension from his company pays out $800 a month, but that's it. My Social Security is about $1,200 a month. Combined with the pension, that's $2,000 a month, but the second mortgage alone is $1,800. The numbers hung in the air between us, heavy and suffocating. What about investments? David pressed. Stocks, bonds, anything? We never had much to invest, I admitted. Bob always said we should, but there was never enough left over after bills and putting you boys through college. That's when Michael leaned forward, his expression serious. Mom, did Dad ever mention anything about cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, Ethereum, anything like that? I blinked at him. Crypto what? Cryptocurrency, he repeated slowly. Digital currency. It's been in the news a lot lately. I shook my head, confused. No, honey. Why would you ask that? Another look passed between them. No reason, David said quickly. We just know Dad was into computers and technology. We thought maybe he dabbled in it. If he did, he never mentioned it to me, I said. Bob handled most of our finances, but he always kept me in the loop about the important stuff. If we had some kind of investment like that, he would have told me, right? Michael reached across the table and squeezed my hand. His palm was warm and dry. Of course, Mom. We're just trying to make sure we don't miss anything. We want to help you get through this. We're going to figure this out together, David added. Why don't you let us go through Dad's papers? His office, his files, his computer? We can sort through everything and create a clear picture of where you stand financially. Would that be okay? I felt tears prick my eyes. You boys are so good to me. I don't know what I'd do without you. You'll never have to find out, Michael said firmly. That night I went to bed early, exhausted from grief and the emotional weight of the day. I could hear my sons downstairs, talking in low voices, the sound of file cabinets opening and closing, the hum of Bob's computer booting up. It comforted me to know they were there, taking care of things, handling the details I couldn't face. Little did I know that at that very moment they were systematically searching for something they'd already found, something Bob had hidden in the depths of his digital life, something worth more than I could have ever imagined. The next morning, I woke to the smell of coffee brewing and bacon frying. For a moment, still foggy with sleep, I thought Bob was downstairs making breakfast like he used to on Saturday mornings. Then reality crashed back, and the grief was so sharp I had to press my hand against my chest to breathe through it. When I made it downstairs, both Michael and David were in the kitchen. Michael was at the stove, and David was setting the table. They'd cleaned up, I noticed. The casserole dishes that had been cluttering the counters were gone, and someone had taken out the garbage. Morning, Mom, David said cheerfully. Sit down. We're making you a proper breakfast. You don't have to do that, I protested weakly, but I sat anyway. My body felt heavy, like gravity had doubled overnight. We want to, Michael said, sliding a plate of eggs, bacon, and toast in front of me. You need to keep your strength up. We ate together, and it almost felt normal. Almost. Except for the empty chair at the head of the table where Bob should have been. So we went through Dad's office last night, Michael said, pushing his eggs around his plate. His filing system was pretty organized. Bob was meticulous about that kind of thing, I said, smiling despite myself. He labeled everything. Sometimes twice. Yeah, we noticed, David said with a laugh. Anyway, we've got a pretty clear picture now. The medical debt is $347,000. The second mortgage has a balance of $89,000. Credit card debt is about $43,000. Plus, there are some outstanding utility bills and property taxes coming due. The numbers made my head spin. Nearly $500,000, I whispered. The life insurance will help, Michael said. $50,000 will at least give you some breathing room, and we can work with the hospital on a payment plan for the medical bills. A lot of times they'll settle for less if you can show financial hardship. Which you definitely can, David added. I nodded, grateful for their help, even as the weight of it all pressed down on me. What about the house? Can I keep the house? Michael and David exchanged another one of those looks. That's going to be tight, Michael admitted. Even with your Social Security and Dad's pension, you're only bringing in $2,000 a month. The mortgage is $1,800. That leaves you $200 for food, utilities, car insurance, gas, everything else. We might need to think about selling, David said gently. The thought of losing the house, losing the last physical connection to Bob and all our memories, made my throat close up. This is my home, I said, and I hated how small my voice sounded. We know, Mom, Michael said. We're not saying you have to decide anything now. We're just laying out the options. Topelami? That's when David pulled out a piece of paper from his pocket. There is one other thing, though. We found some notes in Dad's desk. It looks like he might have been involved in some kind of investment scheme. What? I looked at the paper he slid across the table. It was covered in Bob's handwriting, strings of numbers and letters that meant nothing to me. It's about Bitcoin, Michael said, his tone carefully neutral. Did Dad ever mention investing in cryptocurrency? No, I said firmly. I already told you that yesterday. The thing is, Mom, David said, leaning forward, Bitcoin is kind of a hot topic right now. It's this digital currency that a lot of people have been gambling on. Some people have made money, but a lot more have lost everything. It's basically a scam. DW. Dad was too smart to fall for something like that, I said defensively. That's what we thought too, Michael said, but these notes suggest he might have at least looked into it, maybe even put some money into it. My heart sank. How much money? We don't know, David said. That's the problem with these cryptocurrency things. They're not regulated like real banks. People set up these digital wallets and then the whole thing disappears. It's happening all the time. People think they have thousands or even hundreds of thousands of dollars, but it's all just numbers on a screen. When they try to access it, poof, it's gone. David. So if Bob put money into this Bitcoin thing, Michael added, that money is probably long gone. These scams are designed to look legitimate until you actually need the money. Then you find out it was never real to begin with. I stared at the paper with Bob's handwriting, feeling a new wave of grief mixed with confusion. Why wouldn't he have told me? Maybe he was embarrassed, David suggested. Maybe he realized it was a scam and didn't want to worry you, especially with everything else going on with his health. Or maybe he never actually put any money into it, Michael said. These could just be notes from research he was doing. You know how Dad was. He liked to understand how things worked. That did sound like Bob. He was always reading articles about new technology, always curious. The point is, David continued, if you hear anything about some Bitcoin account or cryptocurrency wallet, don't fall for it. There are scammers out there who prey on widows. They might contact you claiming your husband had this secret fortune in Bitcoin. And if you just pay them a fee or give them your bank information, they'll transfer it to you. It's all fake, all of it. We just want to make sure you're protected, Michael said. These people are ruthless. They'll say anything to steal from vulnerable people. I felt a chill run down my spine. People really do that? Prey on widows? All the time, David said grimly. That's why we're telling you now. If anyone contacts you about cryptocurrency or digital currency or Bitcoin, anything like that, just hang up. Or better yet, call us first. We'll help you figure out if it's legitimate. Though it probably won't be, Michael added. 99% of the time, it's a scam. I looked at my sons, their faces full of concern and protectiveness, and felt a surge of love for them. They were trying to shield me from con artists, from people who would take advantage of my grief. Thank you, I said, reaching out to take both their hands. I don't know what I'd do without you two. What I didn't realize was that the two biggest con artists in my life were sitting right there at my kitchen table, holding my hands and looking me straight in the eye while they lied through their teeth. Michael and David stayed in Austin for another week after the funeral. They said they wanted to make sure I was settled, that I had everything I needed. Looking back, I can see they were buying time, making sure their tracks were covered, ensuring I wouldn't accidentally stumble onto the truth before they'd finished looting their father's legacy. During that week, they were model sons. They mowed the lawn, fixed the leaky faucet in the guest bathroom, took me grocery shopping, and helped me sort through Bob's clothes to donate to Goodwill. Every time I broke down crying, which happened more often than I'd like to admit, they were there with tissues and hugs and reassuring words. "It's going to get easier, Mom," David would say. "Not easy, but easier." These made weather. Michael helped me set up automatic payments for my bills so I wouldn't miss anything in my fog of grief. He reorganized my filing system, created a budget spreadsheet on my laptop, and showed me how to use it. He was patient and kind, and I remember thinking how lucky I was to have such a capable son. What I didn't know was that while he was helping me manage the pittance in my checking account, he'd already transferred $2.3 million from his father's cryptocurrency wallet to accounts he and David controlled. On the last day before they flew home, we had dinner at their father's favorite restaurant, a barbecue place near the university where Bob and I used to go on date nights. The smell of mesquite smoke and the sound of country music on the jukebox were so painfully familiar that I almost couldn't eat. "Mom, there's something we need to talk about," Michael said, setting down his fork. His expression was serious. My stomach clenched. "What is it?" "David and I have been talking, and we want to help you financially. We know you're going to be struggling, and we can't just stand by and watch that happen." "Absolutely not," I said immediately. "You both have your own families, your own expenses. I'm not taking money from my children." "Mom, please," David said. "We're not offering charity. We're offering support, family support." "Each of us can send you $500 a month," Michael said. "That's an extra $1,000. Combined with your Social Security and Dad's pension, that'll give you $3,000 a month. You'll be able to keep the house and have enough to live on." Tears filled my eyes. "That's so generous, but I can't accept it. It's too much." "It's not too much," David insisted. "It's what Dad would have wanted. He took care of us our whole lives. Now it's our turn to take care of you." After a lot of back and forth, I finally, reluctantly, agreed. What else could I do? I was nearly 70 years old with no job prospects and a mountain of debt. Pride is a luxury you can't afford when you're drowning. "Thank you," I whispered. "Both of you. You're such good boys." Michael raised his glass of sweet tea. "To Dad. And to family." "To family," David echoed. I clinked my glass against theirs and we drank to family loyalty, to bonds that couldn't be broken, to the love that tied us together. But what happened next shocked me to my core, because that love, that loyalty, that family bond I believed in so deeply, it was all an illusion, and I was about to learn exactly how much my sons valued family when there was money on the line. The first few months after Bob's death passed in a blur of grief and adjustment. True to their word, Michael and David each sent me $500 at the beginning of every month. With that extra $1,000, I could just barely manage. I ate a lot of ramen and canned soup, kept the thermostat set to 78 in the summer heat, and stopped buying anything that wasn't absolutely necessary. I sold Bob's car, which gave me a little cushion in my checking account. I started seeing a grief counselor at the senior center, and slowly, painfully, I began to put one foot in front of the other. I talked to Michael and David on the phone at least once a week. We'd video call on Sundays, and I'd get to see my grandchildren. Michael had twin girls, Emma and Olivia, who were 14. David had a son, Jason, who was 11. I missed them terribly. Before Bob got sick, we'd visit Seattle and Chicago every year, and they'd come to Austin for Thanksgiving. But during Bob's illness, those visits had stopped. And now, with my financial situation, I couldn't afford plane tickets. "Once things settle down, we'll come visit," Michael would say. "Maybe for Christmas." "Yeshaya the audience." "We'll figure something out," David would assure me. But Christmas came and went, and they didn't visit. They sent gifts, though. Nice ones. There was a beautiful cashmere cardigan from Michael's family, and a set of expensive kitchen knives from David's. I remember thinking it was odd that they could afford such generous gifts when they were already sending me $1,000 a month, but I pushed the thought away. They worked hard. They deserved to spoil their mother a little. It was in late January, 10 months after Bob's death, when the first crack appeared in the facade. I was at the grocery store, pushing my cart through the produce section, trying to decide if I could splurge on fresh strawberries or if I should stick to frozen, when I heard a familiar voice. Margaret? Margaret Johnson? I turned to see Linda Chen, an old friend from the library. We'd worked together for 15 years before we both retired. Linda was one of those people who radiated energy and enthusiasm, the kind of person who made you feel younger just by being around her. "Linda," I said, and we hugged. "It's so good to see you." "I've been meaning to call," she said, her expression turning sympathetic. "I heard about Bob. I'm so sorry for your loss." "Thank you," I said, the automatic response I'd given 1,000 times. "How are you holding up? Are you doing okay?" "I'm managing," I said, which was only partially true. Linda studied me for a moment, her sharp eyes taking in my thrift store clothes and the sparse contents of my cart. "Have you been eating enough? You look thin." "I'm fine," I insisted. "Really, my boys have been wonderful. They're helping me out financially." "That's good," Linda said. "Family is so important in times like these." She paused, then her expression brightened. "Actually, speaking of family, did you hear about what happened to Susan's nephew?" Susan was another librarian we'd worked with, though she'd moved to San Antonio a few years back. "No, what happened?" "He made an absolute fortune in cryptocurrency," Linda said, lowering her voice like she was sharing a delicious secret. "Apparently, he bought Bitcoin back in 2012 when it was worth almost nothing, and now he's a multimillionaire. He just bought a house in Hawaii. Can you imagine?" The word Bitcoin sent a jolt through me. I remembered Michael and David warning me about it, telling me it was a scam. "I thought Bitcoin was some kind of fraud," I said. Linda laughed. "Fraud? Where'd you get that idea? It's legitimate digital currency. Volatile as hell, sure, but definitely real. Susan's nephew cashed out part of his holdings last year, and the money was deposited directly into his bank account. Very real money." I felt confused. "But my sons told me it was a scam. They said people think they have money, but when they try to access it, it's gone." "Well, there are scams involving cryptocurrency," Linda admitted, "just like there are scams involving regular money. But Bitcoin itself is real. The value goes up and down like crazy, which is why it's risky, but it's not fake. Lots of people have made real money from it. Lots have lost money too, of course, but that's investing for you." I must have looked troubled because Linda put her hand on my arm. "Are you okay, honey? You look pale." "I'm fine," I said automatically. "I should go. These frozen vegetables are starting to thaw." "Call me sometime," Linda said. "Let's have lunch. My treat." "I will," I promised, but my mind was already racing. As I finished my shopping and drove home, Linda's words kept echoing in my head. Bitcoin was real. People were making real money from it. So why had Michael and David told me it was a scam? Maybe they were just being protective, I told myself. Maybe they'd heard about the scams and wanted to make sure I didn't fall for one. That made sense. They were just looking out for me. But a small seed of doubt had been planted, and try as I might, I couldn't make it go away. That night, I sat at Bob's old desk in his office. I hadn't spent much time in here since he died. It hurt too much, seeing his things, smelling the faint scent of his cologne that still lingered on his desk chair. But Linda's words had stirred something in me, a nagging feeling that I couldn't shake. I opened the filing cabinet where Michael and David had supposedly gone through everything. They'd reorganized it, labels neat and crisp. Medical bills, insurance papers, mortgage documents, utilities, everything in its place. But Bob had been meticulous about his filing system, and I knew his habits. He always kept personal notes in the bottom drawer, under a folder labeled Miscellaneous. It was his catch-all for things that didn't fit anywhere else. My hands were shaking slightly as I opened that bottom drawer. The Miscellaneous folder was there, thicker than I remembered. I pulled it out and spread the contents across the desk. Most of it was innocuous. Warranties for appliances we no longer owned, old tax returns, a copy of our marriage certificate. But then I found a small notebook, the kind Bob liked to carry in his pocket. The cover was worn, and it was filled with his cramped handwriting. I opened it and started reading. The first few pages were random thoughts and reminders. Check pressure on rear tire. Call plumber about shower leak. Margaret's birthday, Italian restaurant. That last one made my throat tight. We never made it to that birthday dinner. Bob had been too sick by then. But as I flipped through the pages, the entries changed. They became focused on one topic: cryptocurrency. Invested $5,000 in Bitcoin. Current value $8,200, up 64%. Bought more during dip. Total investment now $15,000. Current portfolio value $43,000. Can't believe this is real. The entries went on, spanning several years. Bob had started investing in Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies in 2014. He'd been careful, methodical, buying during dips and holding through volatility. And the numbers kept growing. The last entry was dated March 15th, 5 days before he died. Current total value $2.3 million. Margaret will be taken care of. The boys need to know about the wallet. Seed phrase in safe. Tell them together. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. $2.3 million. Bob had left us $2.3 million. But where was it? I tore through the office, searching for more information. In the back of another drawer, I found a piece of paper with a series of random words written on it. Velvet, monkey, dishwasher, envelope. ... 12 words in total. I didn't know what they meant, but they had to be important. I also found printouts from a cryptocurrency exchange website showing account balances and transaction histories. The last statement was from February, 1 month before Bob died. It showed a balance of $2,173,432 across various cryptocurrencies, mostly Bitcoin and Ethereum. This was real. The money was real, and my sons had told me it was a scam. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the papers. I felt sick, dizzy, like the floor was tilting beneath me. Why would they lie to me? Unless... Number. No, they wouldn't. But even as I tried to deny it, the pieces were clicking into place. Their questions about cryptocurrency right after the funeral, the way they'd insisted on going through Bob's computer and files, their warnings about scams, the expensive gifts they'd sent at Christmas. Oh, God. I grabbed my phone with trembling fingers and called Michael. It was late, after 10 o'clock, but I didn't care. He answered on the third ring, his voice thick with sleep. Mom, is everything okay? Michael, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Of course, he said. What's wrong? You sound upset. Did you find anything about cryptocurrency when you went through your father's things? There was a pause, just a fraction of a second too long. We already talked about this, Mom. Dad had some notes about Bitcoin, but it was just research. He never actually invested in it. Are you sure? My voice was shaking, because I found a notebook and printouts, and it looks like he had over $2 million in cryptocurrency. Another pause, longer this time. Mom, those printouts are probably fake. That's how these scams work. They send you official-looking documents to make it seem real, but when you try to access the money, there's nothing there. These weren't sent to me, I said. They were in your father's filing cabinet. He printed them himself. Then he was being scammed, Michael said, his voice firm. Mom, I know this is hard to accept, but Dad got taken in by a cryptocurrency fraud. It happens to smart people all the time. The money he thought he had never existed. It was all just numbers on a screen generated by scammers. But I talked to a friend today, I said. Her nephew made real money from Bitcoin. She said it's not a scam. Bitcoin itself isn't a scam, Michael said, his tone patient, like he was explaining something to a child. But there are lots of fake cryptocurrency platforms that mimic the real thing. Dad probably got involved with one of those. I'm sorry, Mom. I know you wanted to believe there was some secret nest egg, but there isn't. We checked. Thoroughly. There's no money. What about the seed phrase? I asked. There's a paper with 12 words. What is that? I don't know, Michael said. Probably part of the scam documentation. Mom, you need to let this go. You're going to drive yourself crazy chasing after money that doesn't exist. David and I are taking care of you. You have enough to live on. That's what matters. I wanted to believe him. God, how I wanted to believe that my son wasn't lying to my face. "Okay," I said quietly. "Okay. I'm sorry I woke you." "It's fine, Mom. Try to get some sleep. I love you." "I love you too." Tato Tommy, tato. I hung up and sat there in Bob's office, surrounded by evidence that my husband had been a savvy investor, that had built a fortune to take care of me after he was gone. And I had two choices: believe my son or believe my gut. My gut was telling me that something was very, very wrong. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat at Bob's computer, turned it on, and started searching for answers. I'd never been particularly tech-savvy, but Bob had taught me the basics, and grief is a powerful motivator for learning. I Googled how to access cryptocurrency wallet. The results were overwhelming and confusing, full of technical jargon I didn't understand. But I kept reading, kept clicking, kept trying to piece together how this digital currency thing worked. What I learned over the course of that long night was both enlightening and terrifying. Cryptocurrency was stored in digital wallets. To access a wallet, you needed either the private keys or what they called a seed phrase, usually 12 or 24 random words that acted like a master password. If you had the seed phrase, you could access the wallet from any device. If you lost the seed phrase, the cryptocurrency was gone forever, locked away in digital space with no way to retrieve it. I looked at the paper with the 12 words. This had to be Bob's seed phrase. This was the key to accessing the money. But here's where it got terrifying. If Michael and David had found this before I did, if they'd accessed Bob's computer and his files when I gave them permission to go through everything, they could have used this seed phrase to access the wallet. They could have transferred all the cryptocurrency to their own wallets. And once cryptocurrency was transferred, there was no way to reverse it. It was like cash. Once it changed hands, it was gone. My heart was racing as I searched for how to check cryptocurrency wallet balance. I found something called a blockchain explorer, which was basically a public ledger of all cryptocurrency transactions. If you knew the wallet address, you could see its balance and transaction history. But I didn't know Bob's wallet address. That information wasn't in any of the papers I'd found. I kept searching through Bob's computer files, looking for anything related to cryptocurrency. Michael and David had said they'd gone through everything, but maybe they'd missed something. Maybe Bob had hidden information somewhere they didn't think to look. It was nearly 3 in the morning when I found it. A password-protected file named taxdocs-2-2022.zip. I almost missed it because it looked like a legitimate tax document file, and I'd been focused on finding things with obvious names like Bitcoin or crypto. But Bob had always been clever about hiding important things in plain sight. I tried to open the file. It asked for a password. I tried our anniversary date. Wrong. I tried Bob's birthday. Wrong. I tried my birthday. Wrong. I tried the kids' birthdays. Wrong. Then I tried Margaret, my name. The file opened. Inside was a document titled Digital Asset Information for Margaret. My eyes filled with tears as I opened it. "My dearest Margaret," it began, "if you're reading this, I'm gone, and I'm so sorry I'm not there with you. But I want you to know that I've tried to take care of you the best way I know how." He went on to explain his cryptocurrency investments, how he'd started small in 2014 after reading about Bitcoin, how he'd been cautious but persistent, how the investments had grown beyond his wildest expectations. The current value as of March 2024 is approximately $2.3 million. This money is yours. It's our retirement fund, our emergency fund, our everything fund. It's stored in a cryptocurrency wallet, and I've set it up so you can access it if anything happens to me. Shav. The document included detailed instructions on how to access the wallet, including the wallet address, the exchange platform he'd used, and step-by-step directions for transferring the cryptocurrency to a bank account. At the bottom, Bob had written, "I know this is complicated and probably scary. Ask the boys for help. Michael understands this technology. He'll be able to guide you through the process. Trust them. They love you, and they'll take care of you." Trust them. Oh, Bob, you had no idea what our sons would do. With shaking hands, I copied the wallet address from the document and went to the Blockchain Explorer website. I pasted in the address and hit enter. The page loaded. Current balance, 0. Transaction history showed a massive outgoing transfer on March 24th, one day after the funeral. $2.3 million worth of Bitcoin and Ethereum, transferred to 2 different wallet addresses in equal amounts. $1.15 million to one address, $1.15 million to another address. Split evenly between 2 people. Michael and David. My sons had stolen their father's legacy. They'd robbed me blind while pretending to take care of me. They'd looked me in the eye and lied over and over again, while I thanked them for their generosity and kindness. I sat there in Bob's office as the sun came up, and something inside me broke. Not the same way it had broken when Bob died. That had been a clean break, sharp and devastating, but honest. This was different. This was a betrayal so profound, so incomprehensible, that it shattered something fundamental about how I understood the world. These were my children. I had carried them in my body, given birth to them, raised them, loved them with every fiber of my being. And they had stolen from me without a second thought. They had let me struggle and scrape by on pennies while they hoarded millions that should have been mine. They had sent me $1,000 a month like they were doing me some grand favor when they'd stolen more than $2 million. The math was almost funny. If they'd invested that $2 million at even a modest 5% return, they'd be earning over $100,000 a year in passive income. They were sending me $12,000 a year and acting like saints for doing it. I thought about all the things I'd gone without over the past 10 months. The medications I'd skipped because I couldn't afford the copays. The dinners of ramen noodles and canned beans. The way I kept the house too hot in summer and too cold in winter to save on electricity. The grief counselor I'd stopped seeing because even the sliding scale fees were too much. The plane tickets to see my grandchildren that I couldn't buy. The dental work I'd postponed. The car repairs I'd put off. All while my sons lived in comfort, funded by money their father had intended for me. The rage that filled me was unlike anything I'd ever felt. It was hot and cold at the same time, burning and freezing, so intense it made my hands shake and my vision blur. But underneath the rage was something else, something calculating and determined. If my sons thought they could steal from me and get away with it, they were dead wrong. Bob had said to trust them, but Bob was gone, and I was going to have to trust myself instead. The first thing I did was take pictures of everything. Every document, every printout, every page of Bob's notebook. I took pictures of the password-protected file on his computer. I took pictures of the seed phrase. I took pictures of the Blockchain Explorer showing the wallet balance going from $2.3 million to 0 on March 24th. Then I called my bank and asked about safe deposit boxes. They had one available. I went there as soon as they opened, rented the box, and locked all the original documents inside. I wasn't going to let anything happen to this evidence. Next, I needed to understand exactly what my legal rights were. But lawyers cost money, and I barely had enough to cover my bills. So I did what any librarian would do. I went to the library. The Austin Public Library had a free legal clinic every Tuesday afternoon where volunteer lawyers answered basic questions. It was Tuesday. I got there early and was first in line. The lawyer who helped me was a woman in her 40s named Patricia Hernandez. She had kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. "What can I help you with today?" she asked. I took a deep breath. My husband died 10 months ago. He left me a substantial inheritance in cryptocurrency, but I think my son stole it before I knew it existed. What are my legal options? Patricia's eyebrows rose, but she didn't look entirely surprised. Cryptocurrency theft is becoming more common, unfortunately. Let me ask you some questions. We talked for the full 30 minutes I was allotted. I showed her the pictures on my phone. She took notes, asked clarifying questions, and occasionally shook her head in what looked like a mixture of sympathy and anger. "Okay," she said finally, "here's the situation. In Texas and in most states, digital assets like cryptocurrency are considered personal property. If your husband intended them to be part of your inheritance, and if your sons accessed them without authorization and transferred them to their own accounts, that's theft. It's also potentially fraud and elder abuse. What can I do? She says. You have several options. First, criminal route. You can file a police report for theft and fraud. The district attorney's office would decide whether to press charges. Second, civil route. You can sue your sons for the value of the stolen cryptocurrency. Third, and this is important, if your husband had a will that mentioned these assets, or if you can prove they were marital property, you may have additional legal claims. Bob didn't have a formal will, I admitted. We always meant to make one, but we never got around to it. That's unfortunate, but not necessarily a deal breaker. In Texas, if a spouse dies without a will, their property generally goes to the surviving spouse, especially personal property like cryptocurrency. The fact that he left that document specifically for you, telling you the money was yours, will help establish his intent. But proving they stole it, I said. How do I do that? That's where it gets tricky with cryptocurrency, Patricia admitted. The blockchain shows the transfer, but proving who made the transfer requires showing they had access to the seed phrase or private keys. Do you have evidence they had access? They asked me if they could go through Bob's computer and files. I gave them permission. The transfer happened the day after the funeral, while they were staying at my house and going through everything. That's circumstantial, but helpful. Did they admit to finding anything cryptocurrency related? They told me Bob's Bitcoin notes were about a scam. They said the money never existed. They actively discouraged me from looking into it. Patricia nodded, still taking notes. That could show consciousness of guilt. Them lying about it not being real, combined with the timing of the transfer and their access to the documents, builds a case. What are my chances of getting the money back? I'll be honest with you, Mrs. Johnson. These cases are difficult. Cryptocurrency is still new enough that many judges and law enforcement officers don't fully understand it. Your sons could claim they had permission, that they were just helping manage the assets, that there was a misunderstanding. Even if you win a civil judgment, actually collecting $2.3 million from them might be challenging if they've spent it or hidden it. My heart sank. However, Patricia continued, that doesn't mean you shouldn't try. You have documentation, you have motive, you have timing. And here's something important. Even if your sons have spent some of the money, cryptocurrency transactions are traceable. If they still have the Bitcoin and Ethereum in their wallets, those assets could potentially be frozen by a court order. How do I start? Next one. First, file a police report. Take all your documentation. Ask to speak to someone in the Financial Crimes Unit. They may or may not pursue criminal charges, but having a police report on file strengthens any civil case you might bring. Second, you need a lawyer who specializes in cryptocurrency and estate law. I can give you some referrals. Some might work on contingency, meaning they only get paid if you win. What if they get away with it? I asked, my voice breaking. What if they steal their father's money and face no consequences? Patricia reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Then you make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of people they are. But I don't think it's going to come to that. You have a strong case, Mrs. Johnson. Your sons made a mistake. They underestimated you. I filed the police report that afternoon at the Austin Police Department. The officer who took my statement was skeptical at first, but as I showed him the documentation, his expression grew more serious. This is beyond my expertise, he admitted. I'm going to have to send this to our Financial Crimes Unit. Someone will contact you, ... How long will that take? Could be a few days, could be a few weeks. These kinds of cases take time. Time was something I had plenty of, and a new sense of purpose. For the next 2 weeks, I didn't contact Michael or David. I wanted to see if they'd notice anything different, if they'd sense I was on to them. They didn't. Our Sunday video calls continued as normal. They asked how I was doing, told me about their kids, complained about work stress. Michael mentioned he was thinking about buying a new Tesla. David said they were planning a trip to Aruba over spring break. I smiled and nodded and played the role of the grateful mother, all while documenting everything. The detective from the Financial Crimes Unit, a man named James Reeves, finally called me on a Wednesday afternoon. He'd reviewed the police report and wanted to meet with me. Detective Reeves was in his 50s, with graying hair and sharp blue eyes. He'd brought another officer with him, a younger woman named Officer Lisa Chang, who specialized in digital forensics. They spent 3 hours going through everything I had. They took copies of all my documents. They asked me to write out a detailed timeline of everything that had happened, from Bob's death to the funeral, to my son's warnings about cryptocurrency scams, to my discovery of the theft. "This is a solid case," Detective Reeves said. "The timing alone is damning. They transferred the funds the day after the funeral, while they were in your house with access to your husband's computer and documents. And their subsequent statements to you about Bitcoin being a scam show they were deliberately misleading you." John Plus offered. "Can you arrest them?" I asked. "That's up to the district attorney," he said, "but I'm going to recommend criminal charges. This is theft over a certain value threshold, which makes it a first-degree felony in Texas. We're also looking at potential federal charges since the theft crossed state lines. Michael is in Washington, David is in Illinois. FBI might get involved." "I just want my money back," I said. "I understand, but Mrs. Johnson, I need to prepare you for the possibility that even if we get convictions, recovering the full amount might not be possible. If they've spent it—" "They haven't," Officer Chang interrupted. She was looking at her laptop screen. I traced the wallet addresses. Both wallets still show substantial balances. They've moved some of the cryptocurrency around, probably trying to obscure the trail, but the bulk of it is still there. Total current value across both wallets is approximately $2.7 million. My breath caught. It's worth more now than when they stole it? "Bitcoin and Ethereum have both gone up in value over the past 10 months, she explained. "The portfolio has appreciated by about $400,000. "Can you freeze their wallets?" Detective Reeves asked. Officer Chang shook her head. "Not directly. Cryptocurrency wallets can't be frozen like bank accounts. But if we can identify which exchange platforms they're using, we might be able to get court orders to freeze their exchange accounts, which would prevent them from converting the cryptocurrency to US dollars and withdrawing it." "Do that," Detective Reeves said. Then he turned to me. "Mrs. Johnson, I need to ask you something. When we pursue this, it's going to get ugly. These are your sons. There's going to be media attention, family fallout, a lot of stress. Are you sure you want to go through with this?" I thought about Bob, working all those years to build something for our future. I thought about his notebook entries, his pride in making smart investments. His last words, "Margaret will be taken care of." I thought about my sons, eating dinner with me at their father's favorite restaurant, toasting to family while millions of dollars sat stolen in their pockets. "Yes," I said firmly, "I want to go through with it." "Then we'll move forward. I'll contact the district attorney's office tomorrow." After they left, I sat in my living room and allowed myself to cry, not from sadness this time, but from a strange mixture of grief, anger, and something that felt almost like relief. I was doing something. I wasn't just a helpless old woman being victimized by her own children. I was fighting back. And Bob, wherever he was, would be proud of me. The district attorney's office moved faster than I expected. 2 weeks after my meeting with Detective Reeves, Michael and David each received letters informing them they were under criminal investigation for theft, fraud, and financial exploitation of an elderly person. Michael called me immediately, his voice tight with panic. "Mom, what the hell is going on? I got a letter from the Travis County District Attorney saying I'm being investigated for stealing from you. This is insane." I'd prepared for this moment, but it was still hard. "It's not insane, Michael. I know what you did. I know about the cryptocurrency. I know you and David stole $2.3 million that your father left for me." There was a long silence. "Mom, I don't know what you think you know, but—" "I found Dad's notebook," I interrupted. "I found his computer files. I have the wallet address. I checked the blockchain. I saw the transfer on March 24th, the day after the funeral. I know everything." Another silence, longer this time. When Michael spoke again, his voice had changed. The panic was gone, replaced by something colder. "You don't understand the situation." "Then explain it to me." That money was never yours, he said flatly. Dad was dying. He wasn't thinking clearly. He made risky investments without consulting anyone. That cryptocurrency could have gone to zero at any time. We secured it. We protected the family assets. I almost laughed. Protected them? You mean you stole them? We saved them, Michael insisted, and we've been taking care of you. We send you money every month. We've made sure you can keep the house. You're being ungrateful. Ungrateful? Now, I did laugh, but it was bitter. You send me $12,000 a year for money worth over $2 million. You keep 99% and act like heroes for giving me the scraps. We have expenses. We have families to support. You live alone in a paid-off house. You don't need millions of dollars. It wasn't yours to take. My voice rose despite my efforts to stay calm. Your father left that money for me. Not for you, for me. He wrote it down. He documented everything. He trusted you to help me access it, and instead, you stole it. Represented. You're being dramatic, Michael said, and if you go through with this investigation, you're going to tear this family apart. Is that really what you want? To destroy your own sons over money? You destroyed this family when you decided to steal from your mother, I said quietly. I gave you life, Michael. I raised you. I loved you. And this is how you repay me? I'm not going to let you send me to prison, Michael said, and there was a hardness in his voice I'd never heard before. I'm getting a lawyer. We'll fight this, and you need to understand something, Mom. Even if you win, even if somehow a court sides with you, you'll lose your sons, you'll lose your grandchildren, you'll die alone. Is that really worth it to you? My heart broke all over again, but my voice was steady when I answered. I already lost my sons the day you decided to steal from me. Everything since then has been a lie. So yes, Michael, it's worth it. Because the one thing I have left is my integrity. You took my money, but you won't take that. Ta. He hung up without another word. David called an hour later. The conversation was shorter but equally painful. I can't believe you're doing this, he said. Michael and I tried to help you. We tried to make sure you had enough money to live on, and this is the thanks we get? You stole from me, David. You lied to my face over and over again. We didn't steal anything. Dad was our father, too. We had just as much right to that money as you did. No, I said firmly. You didn't. Your father left that money specifically for me. He documented his wishes. The law is clear. The law is whatever lawyers can argue and judges decide, David said. You're making a huge mistake. You could end up with nothing. We could tie this up in courts for years. Legal fees alone could eat up everything. Then that's what happens. Mom, his voice cracked slightly. Please, don't do this. We're family. I thought we were, I said. I was wrong. I hung up before he could say anything else. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept thinking about Michael's threat. You'll die alone. It wasn't just a prediction, it was a promise. They would cut me off completely. I would never see my grandchildren again. I would have no family left. But then I thought about Bob's last words in his document. This money is yours. I thought about his faith in me, his trust that I would be taken care of. I thought about the 10 months I'd spent struggling while my sons lived in luxury on stolen money. And I knew I was doing the right thing, no matter how much it hurt. The case moved forward slowly, as legal cases do. The district attorney filed formal charges, 2 counts of theft in the first degree, over $300,000, 1 count of financial exploitation of an elderly person, and 1 count of wire fraud, all felonies. Michael and David hired expensive lawyers, the kind who wear $1,000 suits and use words like alleged and allegedly in every sentence, the kind who file motion after motion trying to get the charges dismissed. But Officer Chang's digital forensics work was thorough. She'd traced every transaction, documented every wallet transfer, established a clear chain of custody showing the cryptocurrency going from Bob's wallet to Michael and David's wallets within 24 hours of the funeral. Meanwhile, I hired a civil lawyer on contingency to file a separate lawsuit. Her name was Rachel Goldman, and she was fierce. She filed for immediate injunctive relief, asking the court to freeze my son's cryptocurrency wallets pending the outcome of the criminal case. We need to prevent them from moving or spending the assets, Rachel explained. If they convert everything to cash and spend it before we get a judgment, we'll never recover it. The hearing for the injunction was in May, 14 months after Bob's death. I had to testify in court for the first time in my life. Michael and David were there with their lawyers, and it was the first time I'd seen them in person since the funeral. They looked good, healthy, well-fed, expensive clothes. Michael had a new haircut that probably cost more than I spent on groceries in a month. I told myself to focus on the judge, not on them. My testimony lasted 2 hours. Rachel walked me through everything: Bob's investments, his documentation, his explicit statement that the money was for me, Michael and David's requests to go through Bob's files, the timing of the transfer, their statements that Bitcoin was a scam, my discovery of the theft. Michael's lawyer cross-examined me, trying to make it seem like I was confused, that I didn't understand technology, that maybe Bob had told the boys they could have the money. Mrs. Johnson, isn't it true that you admitted you're not tech-savvy? The lawyer asked. I'm not an expert, but I can read, I said, and my husband's written instructions were very clear. The money was for me. But you gave your sons permission to access your husband's computer and files, correct? I gave them permission to help me organize financial documents, not to steal $2 million. Objection, characterization, the lawyer said. Sustained, the judge said. Mrs. Johnson, please stick to facts. The fact is, I said, looking directly at the judge, my sons transferred $2.3 million out of their father's cryptocurrency wallet the day after his funeral, while I was grieving and didn't even know the money existed. Then they lied to me about it for 10 months. Those are the facts. After both sides presented their evidence, the judge took a brief recess. When he returned, his expression was stern. I've reviewed the evidence presented today, he said. The blockchain records show clearly that substantial cryptocurrency assets were transferred from Mr. Robert Johnson's wallet to wallets controlled by Michael Johnson and David Johnson on March 24th. The timing, occurring 1 day after Mr. Johnson's funeral, and while both defendants had access to the deceased's computer and documents, is highly suspicious. He looked at Michael and David. Furthermore, the evidence shows that both defendants made statements to Mrs. Johnson suggesting that cryptocurrency investments were fraudulent or non-existent, which appears to be a deliberate attempt to prevent her from discovering the transfers. He turned to me. Mrs. Johnson, I'm granting your request for injunctive relief. I'm issuing court orders to freeze all cryptocurrency exchange accounts associated with the defendants. They are prohibited from selling, transferring, or otherwise disposing of any cryptocurrency assets pending resolution of the criminal case and civil lawsuit. Violation of this order will result in contempt charges. Relief flooded through me so intensely I felt dizzy. Furthermore, the judge continued, given the substantial evidence of potential financial exploitation, I'm ordering both defendants to post bond in the amount of $250,000 each to be held in escrow. If they are ultimately found guilty or liable, this bond will go toward restitution. Michael's lawyer stood. Your Honor, that's excessive. It's $500,000 total against alleged theft of $2.3 million, the judge interrupted. I find it entirely reasonable. Next hearing is scheduled for August 15th. Court is adjourned. I watched Michael and David walk out with their lawyers, their faces tight with anger. Neither of them looked at me. Rachel squeezed my arm. That was a major win. The judge clearly sees through their story. What happens now? I asked. Now we prepare for trial, both criminal and civil. It's going to take time, probably months, but we're in a strong position. The months that followed were some of the hardest of my life, even harder in some ways than Bob's illness. At least when Bob was sick, we'd faced it together. Now I was alone, fighting against my own children, watching our family implode in slow motion. Michael and David stopped sending me the monthly $1,000. I'd expected that, but it still hurt to see the petty cruelty of it. They were worth millions, but they'd rather see me struggle than give me anything. I had to get creative about money. I started doing part-time work at the library again, shelving books for $12 an hour. I sold some of Bob's tools and his fishing equipment, things I'd been keeping for sentimental reasons but couldn't afford sentimentality anymore. I applied for food assistance and Medicaid. The church helped with my utility bills. It was humbling, being nearly 70 and struggling to make ends meet while knowing my sons were sitting on millions that rightfully belonged to me. But I'd meant what I told Michael. They could take my money, but they couldn't take my integrity. The criminal trial was scheduled for October, 19 months after Bob's death. The district attorney, a woman named Sandra Martinez, was prosecuting personally. She told me it was because the case had gotten media attention, and she wanted to make an example of it. Financial exploitation of elderly people is becoming an epidemic, she said, and it's especially heinous when it's committed by family members. We need to send a message that this behavior has consequences. The media attention was both a blessing and a curse. Local news stations picked up the story. Texas sons accused of stealing dying father's cryptocurrency fortune. National outlets followed. I gave a few interviews, always careful to stick to facts, never letting my emotions show too much on camera. But the comment sections were brutal. Half the people sympathized with me. The other half called me greedy, said I was tearing my family apart over money, said my sons had just as much right to their father's money as I did. Those comments cut deep, even though I knew they came from people who didn't know the full story. My few remaining friends rallied around me. Linda from the library came over twice a week to have dinner with me. She'd bring groceries, claiming she'd overestimated what she needed, but I knew she was just helping me without making me feel like a charity case. "You're doing the right thing," she'd tell me. "Don't let anyone make you doubt that." The pastor from my church, Reverend Williams, came by regularly, too. He never judged, never tried to convince me to forgive and forget. He just listened and prayed with me when I asked. "God sees everything," he'd say. "The truth will come out." I hoped he was right. The criminal trial began on October 12th, a cool fall morning. The courthouse was packed. Michael and David sat at the defense table with their legal team. I sat behind the prosecution table with Rachel, who was there to observe for the civil case. Jury selection took 2 days. The actual trial took 3 weeks. The prosecution's case was strong. Officer Chang testified about the blockchain analysis, showing exactly how the cryptocurrency had moved from Bob's wallet to Michael and David's wallets. She had charts and graphs and technical explanations that made the jury's eyes glaze over at times. But the core message was clear. This was theft, and it was traceable. Detective Reeves testified about the investigation, the timeline, the suspicious circumstances surrounding the transfer. I testified again, telling the jury about Bob's final document, about giving my sons access to his files, about their warnings that Bitcoin was a scam. I told them about struggling to survive on Social Security while my sons lived comfortably on stolen money. The defense strategy was to claim that Bob had intended to give the boys the cryptocurrency, that there had been verbal discussions about splitting family assets, that I was misremembering or misunderstanding. They put on character witnesses who talked about what good people Michael and David were. They had their wives testify, tearful and sympathetic, talking about family values and how their husbands would never steal from anyone. But they couldn't explain the timing. They couldn't explain the lies about Bitcoin being a scam. They couldn't explain why, if they believed the money was rightfully theirs, they'd hidden it from me for 10 months. Michael took the stand in his own defense. It was painful to watch. "My father told me and David that he wanted us to have his cryptocurrency investments," he said under oath. "He said Mom wouldn't understand the technology, that she'd be better off with simple income from us, rather than trying to manage volatile digital assets." "When did he tell you this?" his lawyer asked. "About a week before he died. He was in the hospital. Mom had stepped out to get coffee, and he called me and David into the room. He gave us the seed phrase and told us to take care of the cryptocurrency after he was gone." It was a good lie, plausible, impossible to disprove directly since Bob was dead. But Sandra Martinez destroyed it on cross-examination. "Mr. Johnson, you claim your father gave you the seed phrase a week before he died. That would have been around March 13th, correct?" "Yes." And yet the seed phrase was still in your father's safe in his home office when your mother found it months later. Can you explain that? Michael hesitated. He must have written it down again. Written down the same 12 random words again in the exact same handwriting? That seems unlikely. I don't know. Maybe he forgot he gave it to us. So your father, who you claim was lucid enough to have a detailed conversation about his cryptocurrency assets and his wishes for their distribution, immediately forgot that conversation and wrote down the seed phrase again? He was on a lot of pain medication. Was he lucid or not, Mr. Johnson? You can't have it both ways. Michael's lawyer objected, and the judge sustained it, but the damage was done. The jury could see the holes in the story. Sandra pressed on. You testified that your father wanted you and your brother to manage the assets because your mother wouldn't understand the technology. But you told your mother that Bitcoin was a scam, that the money never existed. Why would you do that if you were trying to help her? I was trying to protect her from scammers who might try to take advantage. By lying to her? By telling her that legitimate cryptocurrency investments were fraudulent? I was simplifying. You were deceiving her so she wouldn't discover what you'd done. Isn't that the truth? No. You transferred $2.3 million out of your father's wallet the day after his funeral. Why the rush? Why not wait? Talk to your mother. Explain the situation. The market was volatile. We needed to secure the assets. Secure them in your own wallets? Mr. Johnson, if your father really wanted you to manage these assets for your mother's benefit, why didn't you transfer them to an account in her name? Why didn't you tell her about them? Why did you transfer them to your personal wallets and then lie about their existence? Michael's face was red. I don't have to explain my financial decisions to... You do when those decisions involve stealing $2 million from your widowed mother. Objection! Michael's lawyer was on his feet. Withdrawn, Sandra said smoothly. No further questions. David's testimony went similarly. He stuck to the same story, but under cross-examination he got defensive and angry, which didn't play well with the jury. The closing arguments were powerful on both sides. The defense painted Michael and David as devoted sons who had made a mistake in judgment, who had been trying to help, who didn't deserve to have their lives destroyed over a family misunderstanding. The prosecution painted them as cold, calculating thieves who had stolen their dying father's legacy and then manipulated their grieving mother to cover up their crime. These men, Sandra told the jury, saw their father dying and saw an opportunity. They found a small fortune in cryptocurrency, and instead of ensuring it went to their mother as their father intended, they took it for themselves. They didn't just steal money. They stole their mother's security. They stole her retirement. They stole her ability to mourn her husband without worrying about whether she'd have enough money to eat. She paused, letting that sink in. And then, for 10 months, they looked their mother in the eye and lied. They told her the money never existed. They sent her $1,000 a month, less than 1% of what they'd stolen, and acted like generous benefactors. They let her struggle and scrape by while they lived in luxury on money that wasn't theirs. She looked at each juror in turn. This isn't a family misunderstanding. This is theft. This is fraud. This is exploitation, and it deserves to be punished to the fullest extent of the law. The jury deliberated for 2 days. Long enough to make me nervous, but Rachel said it was actually a good sign. Quick verdicts usually favor the defense, she explained. The fact that they're taking their time means they're carefully considering the evidence. On the afternoon of November 4th, the jury came back. We all stood as they filed in. I tried to read their faces, but couldn't. The forewoman, a middle-aged black woman who reminded me of myself, handed the verdict form to the bailiff. The judge read it aloud. In the case of the state of Texas versus Michael Johnson, on the count of theft in the first degree, we find the defendant guilty. On the count of financial exploitation of an elderly person, we find the defendant guilty. On the count of wire fraud, we find the defendant guilty. My knees went weak. Rachel grabbed my arm to steady me. In the case of the state of Texas versus David Johnson, on the count of theft in the first degree, we find the defendant guilty. On the count of financial exploitation of an elderly person, we find the defendant guilty. On the count of wire fraud, we find the defendant guilty. Guilty on all counts, both of them. I heard Michael's wife sob. I heard David's lawyer already talking about appeals. But all I could think was, Bob, they didn't get away with it. They didn't get away with it. The judge scheduled sentencing for December 1st and remanded both Michael and David into custody until then. They were handcuffed right there in the courtroom. As the bailiffs led them away, Michael looked at me for the first time since the trial began. The hatred in his eyes was like a physical blow. But I held his gaze until he was led through the door. Sentencing day came on a gray December morning. The courtroom was even more crowded than it had been during the trial. Several victim advocacy groups had shown up to support me, having latched onto the case as an example of elder financial abuse. Michael and David were brought in wearing orange jumpsuits. They'd been in county jail for a month, and it showed. They looked thinner, harder, older. The judge allowed victim impact statements. I'd prepared one, working on it for weeks, trying to capture everything I felt. I stood at the podium, my hands shaking as I held my written statement. Your Honor, my name is Margaret Johnson, and I'm the mother of the defendants. That sentence alone breaks my heart in ways I can't adequately express. I had to pause, gathering myself. I gave birth to these men. I raised them. I taught them right from wrong. I taught them about honesty and integrity and treating others with kindness. Or at least I thought I did. Because the men who stole from me, who lied to me, who let me struggle while they enjoyed luxury, those men are strangers. I don't recognize them, ... I looked at Michael and David. They were staring at the table. My husband, their father, worked his entire adult life to provide for our family. He was brilliant with technology and made smart investments that grew over time. In his final days, even while dying of cancer, he was thinking about how to take care of me after he was gone. He left detailed instructions. He left a fortune that would have allowed me to live comfortably, to see my grandchildren, to enjoy my final years without financial stress. My voice cracked, but I pushed on. Instead, I've spent the last year and a half eating ramen noodles and skipping medications because I couldn't afford the copays. I've sold my husband's belongings. I've taken charity from my church, all while my son sat on millions of dollars that belonged to me. I gripped the podium harder. But worse than the financial hardship is the betrayal. They looked me in the eye over and over again and lied. They let me thank them for their generosity, well knowing they'd stolen everything their father meant for me to have. They were willing to let me die poor and alone as long as they got to keep their stolen fortune. Now I looked directly at the judge. I don't know what the appropriate punishment is for this kind of betrayal. I don't know if any sentence can adequately address what they've done, but I know they need to face consequences, not just for what they did to me, but to send a message to every other person who might think they can exploit their elderly parents without repercussions. I sat down, emotionally exhausted. Michael and David's lawyers made pleas for leniency. They talked about their clients' previously clean records, their families, their contributions to society. They asked for probation and restitution rather than prison time. The judge listened impassively. When everyone had spoken, he took off his glasses and addressed Michael and David directly. "Stand up," he ordered. They stood, flanked by their lawyers. In my 32 years on the bench, I've seen a lot of theft cases. I've seen people steal to feed drug addictions. I've seen people steal because they were desperate. I've seen people steal because they grew up in poverty and never learned any other way. I don't condone those thefts, but I can at least understand the circumstances that led to them. He paused, his expression hardening. What I've never seen, until now, is two successful, educated men with good jobs and comfortable lives deliberately steal millions of dollars from their own widowed mother. And not just steal from her, but actively work to keep her in poverty so she wouldn't discover the theft. That level of cruelty and calculation is rare, and it demands a serious response. Michael and David stood motionless, but I could see the fear in their faces. The maximum sentence for first-degree theft in Texas is 99 years in prison. The maximum for financial exploitation of an elderly person is 20 years. The maximum for wire fraud under federal guidelines is 20 years. I could stack these sentences consecutively, meaning you would each face over 100 years in prison. There were gasps in the courtroom. However, the judge continued, I also recognize that you are first-time offenders, that you have families, and that there is value in allowing you the opportunity to make restitution. Michael Johnson and David Johnson, I sentence you each to 15 years in state prison on the theft charges, 10 years on the exploitation charges, and 10 years on the wire fraud charges to run concurrently. This means you will each serve 15 years with the possibility of parole after serving 7.5 years. 15 years. My sons would be in their 50s when they got out. Additionally, the judge said, I'm ordering full restitution. The current value of the stolen cryptocurrency, as calculated by forensic accountants, is approximately $2.8 million. You are each, jointly and severally, liable for this amount. The cryptocurrency assets currently frozen by court order will be transferred to Mrs. Margaret Johnson immediately. Any remaining debt will be subject to wage garnishment upon your release from prison. He banged his gavel. Court is adjourned. As bailiffs led Michael and David away, David turned and shouted, I hope you're happy, Mom. You destroyed your own sons. But I wasn't happy. I was heartbroken and relieved and grief-stricken all at once. I had won. But what had I won, really? Money, justice, vindication. But I'd lost my children. I'd lost my grandchildren. I'd lost the family I thought I had. The civil case settled quickly after the criminal verdict. Michael and David's lawyers knew they had no chance, and both men were eager to avoid another trial. They signed over the frozen cryptocurrency assets without a fight. In January, 21 months after Bob died, I finally had access to his cryptocurrency fortune. The total value was now $2.8 million, exactly as the judge had said. Rachel helped me set up accounts with reputable cryptocurrency exchanges and banks. We sold most of the Bitcoin and Ethereum, converting it to US dollars. We kept about 10% in cryptocurrency as an investment, but the bulk went into safer vehicles, index funds, bonds, a high-yield savings account. After paying Rachel's contingency fee and covering my legal expenses, I had just over $2.4 million. I paid off all of Bob's medical debt. Every single bill, down to the last cent. I paid off the second mortgage on the house. I paid off the credit cards. For the first time in nearly 2 years, I was debt-free. With the remaining money, I set up a trust managed by a financial advisor. The trust would pay me $8,000 a month for the rest of my life, with the principal remaining intact and eventually going to charity after my death. $8,000 a month. Combined with my Social Security and Bob's pension, I would have $11,000 a month, more money than I'd ever had in my life. I could afford anything I wanted. Travel, a new car, home repairs, medical care without worrying about co-pays. But the money felt hollow somehow. Bob had meant it to bring me security and happiness. Instead, it had cost me my sons. I tried to visit Michael and David in prison. 3 times I made the drive to the facility, and 3 times they refused to see me. Their wives had divorced them both within 6 months of the conviction. My grandchildren, now being raised by their mothers in distant states, didn't return my calls or letters. I was wealthy and completely alone. Linda told me I should be proud. You stood up for yourself. You refused to be victimized. That takes courage. Reverend Williams said I should forgive, but that forgiveness didn't mean reconciliation. You can forgive them for your own peace of mind without letting them back into your life. My therapist, whom I could now afford to see regularly, helped me process the complex grief of losing children who were still alive. Slowly, over months, I began to build a new life. I volunteered at the library, not for the money this time, but because I loved it. I joined a book club at the senior center. I took a watercolor painting class and discovered I had a talent for it. I traveled, a river cruise in Europe, a trip to see the cherry blossoms in Japan. A week in Hawaii, where I scattered some of Bob's ashes in the ocean, like he'd always wanted. I set up a scholarship fund at the University of Texas in Bob's name for students studying computer science. I donated to elder abuse prevention organizations. I spoke at conferences and events, telling my story, warning other seniors about financial exploitation by family members. My story went viral. It was covered in major newspapers and magazines. I was interviewed on news programs. People called me brave, an inspiration, a fighter. But in my quiet moments, alone in the house Bob and I had built our life in, I didn't feel brave. I felt sad. Because even though I'd won, even though justice had been served, I couldn't help but mourn the family I'd lost. 2 years after the criminal trial, I got a letter. It was from Michael, handwritten on prison stationery. "Dear Mom," it began, "I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even expect you to read this letter, but I need to write it anyway." I almost threw it away, but curiosity won out. I've had a lot of time to think in here, a lot of time to face what I did, and I need you to know that I'm sorry, truly, deeply sorry. The letter went on for 3 pages. He talked about how he and David had rationalized the theft, convincing themselves they deserved the money, that they were protecting family assets, that I wouldn't really need millions of dollars. But the truth, he wrote, is that we were greedy. We saw an opportunity and we took it, without thinking about the consequences or about how much we were hurting you. We told ourselves we were being smart, but we were just being selfish and cruel. He talked about how much he'd lost, his wife, his relationship with his daughters, his career, his freedom. But the worst thing I lost was you. My mother. The woman who gave me everything and asked for nothing in return. I betrayed you in the most fundamental way possible, and I have to live with that knowledge every single day. The letter ended, simply. I understand if you never want to see me or speak to me again. I understand if you hate me. I deserve that. But I needed you to know that I'm sorry and that I love you, even though I have no right to say that anymore. Love, Michael. I read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down my face. Part of me wanted to write back immediately, to forgive him, to restore what we'd lost. But another part of me, the part that remembered the cruelty of his lies, the months of struggling while he lived in luxury, held me back. I put the letter in a drawer and didn't respond. 3 months later, I got a similar letter from David. It was shorter, less eloquent, but equally remorseful. "I was wrong," he wrote. "I was stupid and greedy and wrong. I don't know how to make it right, but I want you to know I'm trying to be a better person. I'm taking classes in here. I'm seeing a counselor. I'm working on myself. Maybe someday you'll be able to forgive me. I hope so, but I understand if you can't." 20. I put his letter in the drawer with Michael's. For weeks, I wrestled with what to do. Could I forgive them? Should I? My therapist said forgiveness was a gift I gave myself, not them. Holding on to anger and resentment only hurts you, she said. Forgiveness doesn't mean what they did was okay. It means you're choosing not to let it poison the rest of your life. Reverend Williams said something similar. Christ calls us to forgive, not to forget, not to reconcile necessarily, but to forgive. Linda was less philosophical. If you want to forgive them, forgive them. If you don't, don't. It's your choice, and whatever you decide is valid. In the end, I wrote back. To both of them. I don't know if I can forgive you yet, I wrote honestly. What you did hurt me in ways I'm still processing. You didn't just steal money. You stole my trust, my sense of family, my peace of mind. You took advantage of my grief and my love for you. But I also know that people make terrible mistakes. I know that you're my sons, and some part of me will always love you, even if I can't forget what you've done. I'm not ready for a relationship. I may never be ready. But I wanted you to know that I received your letters, and I appreciate the apologies. I hope you do better in the future. I hope you learn from this and become men your father would be proud of. But right now, I need distance. I need time. I need to focus on rebuilding my own life. I signed both letters Margaret instead of Mom. It felt important to maintain that boundary. It's been 5 years now since Bob died. 5 years since my son stole his legacy and I fought to get it back. I'm 73 years old. I live comfortably in my paid-off house in Austin. I travel several times a year. I volunteer. I paint. I have friends and hobbies and a full life. Michael and David are still in prison. They'll be eligible for parole in another 2 years. I don't know if they'll reach out when they're released. I don't know if I'll respond if they do. I've had contact with my grandchildren through their mothers. Brief emails, a few video calls. It's awkward and painful, but it's something. Emma, Olivia, and Jason are all teenagers now, trying to understand what their fathers did and why. I try to be honest without being cruel. It's a delicate balance. Sometimes people ask me if it was worth it. All the legal battles, the family destruction, the pain. They ask if I wouldn't have been better off just accepting the $1,000 a month and pretending not to know about the theft. The answer is complicated. Did I gain money? Yes. Financial security? Yes. Justice? Yes. Did I lose my sons? Yes. My grandchildren? Mostly. My peace of mind? For a long time, yes. Was it worth it? I think about Bob. I think about how hard he worked, how carefully he invested, how he spent his final days making sure I'd be taken care of. I think about his last words to me. Trust them. He meant for me to trust Michael and David to help me access the money. Instead, they betrayed that trust in the worst possible way. If I'd let them get away with it, if I'd accepted their lies and their scraps, I would have betrayed Bob's trust in return. I would have let his legacy be stolen without a fight. So yes, it was worth it. Not because of the money, though the financial security has made my life immeasurably easier, but because I stood up for myself, because I refused to be victimized, because I showed my sons and anyone else who might think they can exploit their elderly parents that actions have consequences. I'm not the same woman I was 5 years ago. That Margaret was softer, more trusting, more inclined to keep the peace at any cost. This Margaret is harder, wiser, more careful about who she trusts. I miss the old Margaret sometimes. I miss believing in the goodness of family unconditionally. I miss that naive trust. But I don't miss being taken advantage of. I don't miss struggling to pay bills while my sons got rich off stolen money. I don't miss the lies. So here I am, wealthy and alone, but with my integrity intact. It's not the ending Bob imagined for me. It's not the ending I imagined for myself. But it's the ending I fought for, and there's something powerful in that. Last week I got a call from Emma, Michael's daughter. She's 17 now, about to go to college. "Grandma," she said, and my heart clenched at hearing that word again. "I wanted to thank you." Thank me? For what? For not letting my dad get away with what he did. I know it tore our family apart. I know it was hard. But you showed me something important. What's that? Afterwards, tjoning I väl past to the Wasdassespart, he stopped alone women days coming on to stop it precis themselves. That you can't let people walk all over you, even if they're family. Maybe especially if they're family. And that doing the right thing is more important than keeping the peace. I started crying. I couldn't help it. "I'm going to study law," Emma continued. "I want to help people who've been taken advantage of by people they trusted. Like you." We talked for over an hour. She told me about her life, her plans, her hopes. She asked about my travels and my painting. She promised to stay in touch. When we hung up, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Not hope that my family would magically be restored to what it was. That ship had sailed. But hope that something good could come from all this pain. That maybe my fight, my refusal to be victimized, could inspire the next generation to stand up for themselves too. Bob would have been proud of Emma. Hell, Bob would have been proud of me. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough. If you're reading this story or listening to it, and you're in a similar situation, if someone is taking advantage of you financially, if someone is exploiting your trust, If someone is stealing from you, please, please stand up for yourself. I know it's hard. I know it's scary. I know you don't want to believe that the people you love could hurt you this way. But they can. And they do. And you deserve better. Document everything. Take pictures, save emails, keep records, talk to a lawyer, file a police report. Don't let fear or shame or family pressure keep you silent. Because here's what I learned. Family isn't about blood. It's about love and respect and honesty. If someone is stealing from you, lying to you, exploiting you, they're not acting like family, no matter what their relationship to you is. You deserve to be treated with dignity. You deserve to have your wishes respected. You deserve justice. And if I, a 68-year-old widowed librarian with no legal experience, could take on my own sons and win, then you can fight back too. Don't let anyone steal your security, your dignity, or your peace of mind. Stand up. Fight back. You're worth it. And to Michael and David, if you're someday released from prison and you happen to hear this story, I hope you've learned something. I hope you've grown. I hope you've become better men. But whether you have or haven't, I want you to know this. I don't regret fighting back, not for a single moment. You forced me to choose between family peace and self-respect, and I chose self-respect. I'd make the same choice again. Your father left me a gift, and I fought to keep it. In doing so, I discovered gifts I didn't know I had: strength, courage, determination. Gifts that no one can steal. So thank you, in a twisted way, for teaching me that I'm stronger than I ever knew. And to Bob, wherever you are, I kept the promise. I took care of myself. I didn't let anyone take advantage of me. I fought for what you wanted me to have. I hope you're proud. I love you. Always.